All right, and we're recording. We're so excited to be here today. I have my beautiful friend and fellow priestess Marguerite here. We're going to have a conversation about some extraordinary topics, some things that Marguerite has spent a really long time unearthing, so to speak. And Marguerite, I had the pleasure of meeting this summer when she came to visit me in July. And things were just extraordinarily profound and deep, and we connected over some really deep things. And those that are, following my work know that I'm so deeply connected to womb work and female sexuality. And I think that Marguerite's work really just kind of takes it, in her book, she says is the highest form of shamanism that women can embody. And we are talking about miraculous conception. But before we go any further, I just want to welcome Marguerite and let her
Thank you.
introduce herself.
Thank you, Z. It's just wonderful to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity. I love connecting with you. I'm so grateful to you for being on the planet right now, for all that you're doing, for all that you're giving, for all that you're bringing. Just the deep, deep levels of information. And I'm so grateful that you and I seem to sort of puzzle piece or inspire one another, validate each other, and lead each other into, new rungs of the spiral. So this is a wonderful synergistic connection. So grateful for you.
Yeah, it's so totally true. Because many years ago, when I first started getting information about, the reptilian sex war and all this stuff, I could not really find any information about it out there. And I was like, man, I must be crazy, but like I'm seeing it with my eyeballs, and it's just obvious to me kind of what is happening on the planet. And so the only other person I could find information from was Lisa Renee's work. And then one day I literally just typed in like reptilian sex or something. And that was when I first found Marguerite's work. She had written a blog about it. And I think that this is one of the most relevant conversations we can have on the planet right now, even though there's so many other things that are distracting us from that. Because, the real plague that we have on the planet is sexual misery and sexual degradation. And there's a real reason why, human trafficking and abuse is so prevalent, and just in the general degradation of sexuality itself. And so I'm really excited to bring this topic back in because I know that other things are really at the forefront of community and society right now, but really we have to focus. And I think that the return of this original priestesshood and these ancient knowings are really the antidote to that planetary affliction.
Definitely. The level of this warfare is so intense and it's so ongoing. And it involves, not to jump right away into like all these negative topics, but because we will get to the better place, but the level of sexual abuse just in the ordinary families is unbelievable. And then there are levels of how that is used ritualistically. And then there is, the misery programs that have been put between men and women and really anyone entering into a love relationship with another. I mean, it's just been a miracle that we've gotten this far on planet Earth over the last few thousand years with all of this stuff going on. And it really needs to be exposed for what it is, as an attack on humanity. And therefore, once we understand that, then we get empowered as to, okay, what do we need to do? And what are some of the other hidden remedies, as like we're going to go into today, that have been covered over and but that are at the core of where we need to go.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate a little bit of what Marguerite is saying here is that this is a very pertinent conversation, and this is a direct way that we can begin to engage in this planetary healing effort. Oftentimes people find so much out about the negative things that happen on the planet, like the human trafficking, the pedophilia. And then the thing is that they're like, well, what am I supposed to do about it? Do I like
Yeah.
forge a military and just go out and rescue the children? And it's like, yeah, some people will go do that. Some people will have the power and the resources to do that. And, so much of this is happening in the esoteric levels and in the etheric levels that there's so much we can do in just our own physical body, and just the liberation of our own system through, firstly, the healing of, levels of abuse that most people may not have even heard of, astral abuse, societal abuse, mind control. These levels of sexual abuse people have really just accepted as the way things are, or as normal. Having pornography like pop stars dancing around on TV when we're like 3 years old, and just like intaking that information as what is normal about sexuality. This is actually not normal, and this is a form of societal sexual abuse. And so, obviously, the greatest way to doing that is the absolute restoration of our original sexuality, or even the embodiment of our highest form of sexuality. And I think that Marguerite and our work really intersect in this sweet spot right here of both, really diving in, because I feel like once you access the purity of these teachings, it's pretty much impossible for you to not see what's going on out there in the
Yes.
world, right?
Yes. Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And there, as you're speaking, there are so many areas that I'm remembering and tapping into, both information I've received through my own downloads, as I know you have, as well as what I've observed in groups, what I've observed and received from my clients, just the levels at which these things attack. And then the understanding that, yeah, the whole entire pornography industry is a form of sexual abuse and enslavement, because it cathects people's sexuality with unhealthy things rather than wholesome Lemurian-oriented erotic sexuality. It gets us into these downgraded, imaginations and all of that type of thing. And then there's the institutional sexual abuse that has happened through various religious programs that have gotten in the way of people's natural functioning. Um, and frank, beautiful, natural sexuality, making it bad, dirty, wrong, twisting it all around, making it fetishistic. And then there's been the level of sexual abuse that Elizabeth April has pointed out, that comes from those who have been abducted. That she has this unbelievable video that is out on YouTube that talks about how when you get abducted and your reproductive material is taken, it can insert a wedge into your orgasmic ability and different things like that. I mean, I was just completely shocked, but had my eyes open, and it explains so much to listen to that level. So there's there have been all these levels of sexual abuse that have happened and that are still ongoing. Also, the astral abuse, where it can happen in the dream time, and it can also happen on the astral plane through also a trick where these beings know how to change your timeline, and they can insert a false timeline into your past where you did have sexual abuse. That is not your organic timeline, but what you do is you pull out a memory that they give you, and then you unfold an entire history of sex abuse, which is why these so-called memories can happen at any stage of your life. They're not always just repressed memories from something that happened in your organic lifetime. They're sometimes inserted memories through an inserted timeline that then lets you flush out that whole timeline of abuse, reliving the energies, reliving the trauma, and the beings get their energy from that, whether it's relived in a false timeline or whether it's lived originally in an organic timeline. And it's this kind of confusion also that leads to a large levels of the denial of the participants, because they're like, what? I'm in your organic timeline. That never happened. I would never do that to you. And yet this person is having a parallel timeline where all of a sudden her father, or, whatever it is doing this. And so a lot of times that's why the denial comes on the part of the perpetrators, because they're like, wait, what? It's through this timeline manipulation. So that was one thing that came to me years ago. And so this is all the stuff that needs to be, burped up, so to speak, so that we can see it all, lay it out on the table, see what's going on, where we fall within these things, and then actually, how to release this, how to release these false timelines, how to release the trauma touches, the entities that come in when people are touched in an unwanted way, be it from an on-planet or off-planet being, and how we can, just get back to these natural Lemurian flows within our body. And as Lisa Renee says, get back with the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage grid that has now come back onto the planet. She talks about it in terms of King Arthur and Guinevere template, but that's been fragmented. So there's been like the wars between the sexes. I mean, it's just gone on and on. All of this unhappiness, this misery, divorcing and inner child clashing and all of that type of thing. So there's a lot of healing that we're doing on so many different levels. And that's why I'm really glad that you're doing the work you are, that we're connecting in today. I know that we're eventually going to get to the topic of the exalted womb and divine birth and so forth, but we really need to bring this out so that we all understand more clearly what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just want to bring a little bit of background into all the things and validate everything that Marguerite is saying here. Because, I've definitely had a lot of clients. I think, most of my clients, I'm going to say 95% of my clients are women. And most of them come into a session with a history of sexual abuse.
Yeah,
Many of them, tell me that they have felt like they were abused in the dream time or in
yeah,
some other realm because they have all of the symptoms of having sexual abuse, like, fear around sexuality, awkwardness, distortion, and just weird neurotic behaviors around sexuality. And yet, they don't remember anything and they're confused about it. And most of the time, when we peek into their field, there has been interdimensional manipulation. This is
yeah.
something that is really not rare. We think, oh, once in a while a person gets abducted, but this is really a societal thing. Even pornography, I'm seeing how many different I guess they're brands or lines of pornography. They're actually connected to the same etheric technologies that are siphoning sexual energy and they're tagging people. And so even as I'm going through my own sexual healing, as I'm going through my human stuff, it took many years until, I started unraveling these more horrific things that, our overlays, our implants, uncovered this memory of having been abducted by reptilians and they were shape shifting into my dad. And that's how they were imprinting me with this false memory of,
That's the thing.
having been abused by
Yes, they
family
can
members.
shapeshift into loved ones. It's
Yeah, and it's
dastardly.
just horrifying because so many of my clients are like, "Oh, I think I was abused by my cousin, but it's just so weird because they're, actually a really nice guy and I'm just really confused because I'm really feeling it, but at the same time I'm feeling this weirdness." And so, yeah, you're totally right that we have to start talking about this because it's so common. Scanning back to when I was 11 years old, which is when I first discovered pornography, this is when we kind of scan our timeline backwards and see really what happened when we were going through those passages. There were definitely portals that were opening through pornography, and pornography is a weapon. It's a societal abuse weapon, a
Yeah,
technology that's literally designed to abuse human sexuality. And the reason, once you pull out the reason why this happens, and it becomes not so unbelievable
that's right.
because humans are creator beings, right? We have such powerful and immense emotional and creative energy because we were literally built and designed to channel cosmic energy into creation. That's what these vessels were designed to do. And so this is a very powerful energy that's highly coveted in the universe by beings that, don't have access to their own creative energy or have
Yeah.
destroyed their own connection to, their own reproduction or just are coveting our, advanced angelic DNA. And so we put
And
things in that
half the time
perspective.
they're coveting the embodied sexual experience. They're coveting the energy that they get from any kind of sexual experience, especially the depraved or painful type. And they
Yeah.
are coveting sometimes ensoulment, which is why they abduct human material, like the Greys. They want to be ensouled again. They want to have a soul so that they can fully reproduce and reincarnate again, which they can't do now. They can only clone. And so, there's all these levels on which they are harvesting us energetically and physically and spiritually.
Hmm. Absolutely. And this is I don't want anybody to be freaking out like, "Oh my God, the alien invasion has happened." And it's like there's hundreds of thousands of star seeds on the planet that are highly
Right.
coded with the original template, and I'm so
Yeah.
happy that we're actually taking this conversation to just like, as you say, this exalted place, because this is the antidote. We have the power inside of our body, inside of our DNA, to restore, and it's not an easy path. And this is why,
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful that the people in this community that are following my work, we're really the greatest warriors of divine love that there are on this planet, because it's not for the weak of heart to open our eyes to this level.
That's right. That's right. And this invasion has already happened. It's happening. Don't worry about it. You've already been taken in. So now all you have to do is just figure out what to do about it. And those templates are within all of us that you're talking about, those star code really templates. It's within all our DNA. It's just latent. So we're here to say, hey, let's turn it on. Talk about being turned on. It's a whole different way of being turned on.
Yeah, so let us go into that. Because I feel like to my community, this news about the sexual abuse is not really new, because we talk about the sexual misery programming often, and actually, I haven't really brought in any of this energy about miraculous conception, because it's relatively a new thing in my world. Even back in that time when I found your work, I think this is back in 2018, early 2018. I was really looking at your work because of the sex war stuff. And at that point, you had already been doing womb work, doing the miraculous conception research, obviously. And, I was kind of like, huh, that's cool. Isn't that biblical? But it didn't really click that, it's a Christic Siddhic power until, I started tapping into those fields myself.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. How did you get into this? What inspired to, bring all these teachings back? And really, what did you have to do to achieve the level of authority and knowledge that you do have today?
Right, right. So just to give like the brief little summary of divine birth, what it is a shamanic technology that women have been engaged in for thousands of years. It harks back to an original procreative pattern that humanity had as well. And it's the highest level magical practice and achievement, a yoga, if you will, that a woman can accomplish as a sacred, holy person. The purpose of it is to bring in an avatar, to bring in a higher order, higher vibrational being to the earth plane to assist humanity with upgrading itself every once in a while. This had to happen once humanity itself started downgrading its own incarnational vibration, right? Like from Lemuria onward, things started going down, and we were no longer incarnating as these divine humans walking the planet. So it became a priestess function to bring these divine humans back. And so the the woman who achieved it would apotheosize. She would become divinity. She would achieve her ascension as a result of doing this. The child who was born would achieve their ascension. They were all considered avatars walking the planet. And then in the later years of it, the child, though, had to go through a ritual sacrificial murder like Jesus, but there are others, in order for this person to release the karma of the world and then have their own ascension. So that was an unfortunate task that they started taking on. So this is what I discovered in it came from a couple of different things. Um, I was reading The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Drunvalo Melchizedek. In one of his volumes, he channels Thoth, and he says that Thoth said that divine birth was a real thing, that Mary really did it. And right around the same time, I was researching ancient priestesses of Greece. I wanted to catalog the exact every single thing that had been written about them, what they had done. I was trying to reconstruct basically past life information, right? And I was one day reading this book in Italian by Anna Maria Corradini called Meteres, Mothers, and it was about the Demeter and Persephone story. And basically, she started saying that the Demeter birthing of Persephone was parthenogenetic originally, that it was like Persephone coming out of Demeter without any activity or rapes or any male sperm from the gods or anything like that, contrary to the stories that we've been fed, that originally this was a parthenogenetic birthing schema. And that must have kicked in memories of my understanding that the goddesses originally reproduced this way and human women could reproduce this way. And I just had this downpour. It was an altered state, like I had known how to recognize by that point an altered state. And I said, oh my gosh, I think women were really doing this. And then when I started looking again at the Greek material that I was scouring through, what were these priestesses doing? Which meant I had to look in not only historical texts, but also legendary texts and myth, all of which I think were talking about histories. And then from that, in deductive perspective, I was able to see all the evidence for it and start putting it together. And then I started realizing that there were phases of divine birth, So I went through this whole intense process over literally like a 9-month period of researching and writing. And so I was looking at all the ancient Greek material. And of course, right away, I was able to understand how Mary figured into that and how her mother Anne figured into that, because come to find out, there's a gospel, a suppressed gospel about Mary called the Infancy Gospel of James, that Mary was divinely born by her mother Anne. Something we don't hear in the Christian Bible, but the Catholic Church still had all these people in their feast days, like how are they showing them and hiding them at the same time? I mean, this is like a real trick that they would get involved in. And so I was just able to see so much. I was able to see so much about Guinevere and King Arthur and Lancelot and Elaine and Igraine, Arthur's mother, that she divinely gave birth to him, and Buddha, how his mother divinely gave birth to him. Lao Tzu, I just started seeing all of the stories of divine birth all over the planet, basically in every religion. Sarah's miraculous birth of Isaac in the Hebrew Bible, the peacemaker's miraculous birth in the Iroquois tradition. It goes on and on. I mean, there are at least 13 strong stories of these divine births on the planet that you can find. Krishna, everywhere. So I did this very, 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 very intensive work as my dissertation at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Sorry about the noise here. And that was, my serious initiation into all this work. Very occasionally, I would go into medicine realms with cannabis, but it wasn't, I didn't pull this through primarily with medicine. I pulled it through primarily through intuition and intellect. And then I would sometimes go into these ceremonies and would receive other information and so forth. So this is how I base my claims. It's on my intellectual research combined with my intuition, combined with at times open states of consciousness, combined with synchronicities that were happening, like while I was writing this, and I was researching into the Delphic Oracle as being a place of divine birthing. All the Oracle centers were places of divine birthing originally, and that the women used medicines to do it. What do I find out? The Greek archaeological establishment is determining that indeed hallucinogenic gases would come up at Delphi, like all of these unbelievable synchronicities. I'd have to go back through my notes and, just to write the book of all the synchronicities and validations. And I'd be sometimes lying down in my office because it would be so much to handle this energy. I'd have to lie down on the carpet and just breathe. And what I really got is that you have to realize that this is going out way into the future, and people are going to be coming to you, and people are going to be awakening to this. And this is a whole thing that you're unfolding. And it was just, wow. It was just little old me with my books and Post-it notes and my computer typing away. And just trying to trust and hold it all. And luckily I had a partner at the time who could help me hold it so that I wouldn't feel it. Because sometimes I started feeling like, is this just insane crap? I mean, what the heck? But there were so many cross validations in the texts and in the research. And then by the time I got to Mother Mary's gospel, which I talk about in this new book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, Mary and the
Yeah,
Lineage of
everybody
Virgin
go
Birth.
get a copy of this book. Go get a copy of this book if
Meow,
you are at
meow.
all interested. Because, we talk a lot also about how the current starseed mission we are on is a Christos realignment mission directly
Totally,
connected into that whole lineage. And so if you're
totally.
interested in any of that, go get this book.
Yeah, you have to understand how Mary and her mother Anne and the entire Holy Family were reincarnates over lifetimes who were like, okay, now dive, dive, dive. This is the lifetime. We're bringing in the Christed Master. We're bringing in the Sacred Heart female. You know, Mother Mary, after many, many lifetimes, according to Sri Kaleshwar, was finally incarnated in the way that she was, divinely born, so she could be the avatar. So then she could give birth to the avatar. So Jesus is like a double avatar, right? And it's not just about like la la la, let's pray to Jesus, you know, da 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 da, all these programmed ways. It's like, no, this is serious business. Actually, the Christos Sophianic energy is the antidote to AI. And that's something I received just this week. And AI is what's behind all of the programming that's been going on uh,
Yes,
in the past 2 years, and the
absolutely.
so-called crisis. It's an AI program. So you need to
Yes,
learn how to use your Christic Sophianic light of love to become the solar flare. You are the solar flare. You are the Christic Sophianic Marian solar flare. You're going to clear your own field and you're going to clear the earth field. That's how it's going to happen here. So this is
yes,
not just like a religious choice.
right.
Oh, yeah, I'm Catholic, I'm Christian, whatever. No, this is, hello, we're working on the planet here.
Yeah. So for those of you that need a lowdown on AI, I do have a video on my YouTube channel called AI, the flu, and multidimensional healing or something. I made this video a week after I contracted the you know what, and got the
Yeah.
lowdown on the AI and all that stuff. But I wanted to swerve back real quick on something you were saying. Because I think a lot of people do have this idea that because of the Bible and everything that, oh, these women, they just all of a sudden got impregnated by God. Like they
No,
had no idea what they were doing. All these poor
no.
little women, now all of a sudden they're pregnant. So
Yeah.
how is that a lie and how is that actually taking away from the power of the priestesshood?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these stories of divine birth, miraculous birth are all over the place. We have, again, Anne's birth of Mary. We have Elizabeth's birth of John the Baptist. We have Mary's birth of Jesus. And then again, all over the world, we have these stories. With Anne and Elizabeth, and Sarah before them. Sarah, Anne, Elizabeth, and Sarah were all elders. Okay, they were technically post-menopausal, even though these women probably never menstruated. They ceased their menstruation as part of the practice, um, and they could eternally rejuvenate. But yeah, those stories make it look like these women are lamenting that they couldn't have a baby, they were shunned by the community, blah 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 blah, da 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 da. Isn't it nice? God gave them a child, through, and it's just like, hello, this was a technology they were working. They were in lineages, okay? Anne and Mary were mother-daughter. Sarah was their ancestor. Elizabeth was Anne's sister, according to the Quran. Okay, the Islamic tradition, I would say. And so, these women knew how to work it. The stories that make it sound like a quaint little fable that they were given a miraculous child without even having sex are completely hiding the priestesshood deliberately, because the patriarchal controllers, by the time they were writing down those texts and getting a grab on these mystical histories, did not want all that information out there. They didn't want people, and especially women, to look too closely at this possibility and what was going on and what could be possible going into the future. No, they wanted to hide it. And then, of course, they wanted to hijack it and use it in occult ways to create demonic, beings and so forth and so on. That's a whole other aspect of it. So we're reclaiming it for the light here. It's all part of understanding the womb itself as a representative of the whole entire universe, the goddess, and how this functions to create. So there are different ways that the womb can create. It can create through parthenogenesis, in other words, self-replication without male sperm, like that condor bird in California that recently did it. They determined through DNA testing that, oh my gosh, there's no male uh, there's no male DNA in this child. Oh gosh, these birds were reproducing parthenogenetically. I love it. The condor from California. Hello, the symbolism of that, right? The eagle and the condor, California being the repository for Lemuria, like the symbolism of when these things happen and how they happen. Mostly they happen with cold-blooded creatures, reptiles and sharks and snakes and things like that, which is in and of itself fascinating, right? Because the symbolism of these creatures. So, parthenogenesis is one technology. Another technology is sacred union with a disembodied being, which is kind of a form of parthenogenesis, but not really, because now you have a being entering into your womb space, be it on the astral plane, though. Then there's another technology, which is the sacred marriage of the human male and female coming together and embodying the divinities and giving birth to a divine child, like the pharaohs. The Egyptian pharaonic line came through that way. There's the method of using the dildo. Okay, so there's all these dildos floating around ancient Greece, and people are like, "What's with these dildos?" And and we have the dildo of Isis, the dildo of Osiris. That's how she became impregnated with Osiris posthumously, where Osiris had already crossed over from his human netter life to the other side, and she was able to work that magic with a magic phallus. Okay, so that was Mary in her life just prior to being able to give birth to Jesus parthenogenetically. That was a little practice run. Okay, she was still working with the phallus. She's like, I gotta get off this phallus. I gotta wean myself from this phallus. And finally she did, because Rudolf Steiner says that Isis was the previous incarnation of Mary. And when I heard that, I was like, truth. So Mary was practicing. She was practicing all these technologies during her previous lives until she was able to come in as an avatar from her mother and then divinely conceive Jesus, who was a completely new soul, according to Kaleshwar, which is truth to me. He's not a reincarnate. He is a new fabric coming in from the universe. Boom. That's the highest tantra of all. That is why Mary was the highest practitioner of this art, because no other woman had necessarily created a new being wholesale, but Mother Mary did, because she was totally united with Divine Mother. Okay. So that's like a little bit of, going into the fractal of it. Direct me with another question. I could go on and on, right?
I want to rein it in real quick to make it just a little bit accessible. Like, why are we talking about this as a solution to everything that we forementioned in the beginning? Because it's a spectrum, right? And when we're talking about this shamanic lineage, and I'll get into just so earlier this summer, when Marguerite's books first came out. I think this is like April or something that I saw it. I actually ordered it pre-order, and so by the time it got to my house, I'd totally forgotten about it. And at that point, my community that's been following me for a while, you guys know what had happened with Kara a couple of years ago. This little avatar child came to me as my ascension teacher, and then actually flew away after being here for 9 days. And she taught me so much about the womb. And actually, at that point, she channeled this womb healing class through me as I was pregnant with her. And so all of this stuff was flying around my head, and she was pulling me into these spaces where I felt like my being, it was like my heart merged with the cosmos, or my heart merged with God. And in that moment, I just felt just this deep love, and it wasn't any kind of love that I'd ever experienced before. It wasn't erotic love, it wasn't, romantic love. I guess it could be something like a devotional love, but it also felt like it had substance, like the kinds of love that I have experienced, like romantic love, like erotic love, but it was so much more than that. And so when this book flew into my reality, I was like, whoa, right? And I'm reading through these stories about how, these women, they spent their whole life cultivating a state of mastery. When we
Yeah.
talk about oracle traditions and priestess traditions, well, what did priestesses do? They didn't sit around all day just, fantasizing about gods or whatever. They were cultivating a state, an avatar state, a state of being in union with divinity inside, right? Inner divine union. And through that absolute unification process with divinity, through that inner divine union path, at a pinnacle of that, you literally can merge with God itself, and in that place, instantaneously materialize. And through those static places is when people can fly or bilocate, or Jesus walked on water. And for
Yeah.
women, one of the highest ways that this happens is through the miraculous conception of children. And so, actually, it was actually when Marguerite came to visit me in late July when she was here that I'm pretty sure I had just conceived a child. Like at that point, I didn't even know I was pregnant yet. Because when you came, like I think I was just, my period was a couple days late. It was a day at a time, and it was just that weird
Oh
moment.
my gosh. I know. And there we were doing all this clearing and stuff together, and we did ceremony, and wow, it's like all of that was imprinting into your child.
Yeah, and yeah, so I mean, Kara, she's bringing through just all of these teachings of the original creation. I know that she's very deeply connected to these teachings that you're talking about. I remember in our oracle ceremony when we had that cacao ceremony,
Yeah.
we were asking questions because I personally felt so connected to the resurfacing of
Yeah.
this, ancient technology. And what came through was that, there's a timeline, like this is inevitable. Eventually, this ancient tradition is going to re-emerge, but it's not necessarily, in this generation. It could be the next, or it
Yes.
could be the next, because the
Correct.
reality on the earth is so dense right now. And so it's
Yes.
very interesting that since then, all of these babies, like they're flying around. A lot of psychics tell me they're like, hundreds of babies are flying around your head. I'm like, I'm
Wow.
absolutely not giving birth to all of them, but I think they're wanting to recruit. I feel like I'm like a spokesperson for them now, where I'm like, all right, like ladies who wants to become an ascended master, because I mean, it's not like a cakewalk. It's not like you wake up one day and you're like, I'm gonna conceive an avatar. It's really,
That's
it
right.
requires devotion, doesn't it?
That's right. And more than one lifetime. That's the thing. It's a multi-lifetime agreement. So then you have to come into this lifetime, remember your contracts, and then get going. Try to get your information all over again, and then start from there. That's why they're like, we got to bring in Mary as divinely avatar so that she can access her information more quickly and get on with it, so she can do it when she's 12 years old. All right.
Yeah, it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills
That
and hot
that is
flashes.
really fascinating, Z, to think that you were already pregnant, because yeah, I mean, women have come to me, and I'm sure there are many who haven't, who are either practicing this or hope to practice it, but some have come to me and they have, aspirations about this. And I sort of look at who would have the right energy signature to do something like this, including the capacities, the understandings, the devotional nature, the clearing of the body and that has happened, and the emotions that has happened. And there are very few people that I've seen who I think could be at that level. And but that was really coming through during that ceremony. So, but clearly, you're meant to have this other type of experience right now. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I think we're going to be
absolutely.
carrying a big valence for the next generations
Yeah, for
to
sure.
be able to increasingly have the capacity and the energetic support on the planet to be able to do it. And also, ultimately, we want this to be an obsolete technology. We want every couple to give birth divinely. And there is a practice, a mantra practice that a couple can do from the Holy Womb Chakra teachings from Sri Kaleshwar that he retrieved from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, to conceive a divine child. Literally, that's what it's called. So, I mean, originally, this is how we gave birth. And this is also how you can give birth to yourself within this lifetime. You can become the ascended master through grades of initiation, right? And that is, it all goes together. Like this practice had to become externalized and grouped into a priesthood or priestesshood, just like shamanism in general had to. Like the holy people suddenly were sequestered into this one class of people because nobody else could handle it, because the earth plane had gotten so thick because of these controller beings. And then they tried to snuff out all of those indigenous knowers and all of those witches and all of those priestesses and whatnot and so on. But the flame will never go out, you know, and the flame is getting into a bonfire now of understanding, where we can look to what are these various womb and other chakra technologies that we can give birth to divine children, that meaning, you know, children, souls that are of a higher vibrational capacity that can really help turn this earth plane around. And how can we give birth to ourselves divinely? How can we have this ascension, or what I call inscension? So I see all of these things as very much related, and they're all related to the sexual healing that we have to go through with the womb and the phallus, to the understandings of Tantra and energy exchanges between people and prana. There's a wonderful woman named Christiana Eltryan, I think, in Romania, who's doing this work, among others, you know, and how this relates to our personal healing. You know, it's all very much holistic and integrated. So it's not like this concept of virgin birth is separate and apart. It's like it's part of this big ball of understandings, clearings, and amplifications that are going on right now, and in particular with the woman's womb.
Yeah, and I also think that we're in a particular moment on Earth right now too, where there are thousands of avatar and highly ascended souls that are planning on coming to the planet, ones that have never come to the planet before, ones that are coming from source, just like, Marguerite was mentioning about Jesus earlier. These star seeds, well, what are star seeds? They're higher dimensional beings, right? And it's like we can really, what these children, they're asking is for us to have a clearer template to clear and heal our vessel, so
Yeah,
that they can have that extra leg ahead,
that's great.
so that when they come in, they can just get to their work. And I feel like on that level, you know it's not going to require for parthenogenic conception to bring in an avatar child. This
Yeah.
is a lot of with these kids, they're really just asking me to convey these messages, because it also requires devotion, however, because I feel like in our spiritual community, sometimes people are a little bit too like, oh, well, it's just going to happen, or because I'm so and so and because I'm spiritual, things just happen by themselves. And it's like there's a balance between things are
Yes.
the way they are. Yes, you are a highly coded being, and you have to participate in the
Yeah.
actualization of those codes and templates. And our star children are asking for us to go that extra mile for them, to learn how to clear our womb, to learn how to heal interdimensionally, so that being pregnant now, Kara and I are working together almost every day, just like we were when I was pregnant with her the first time. And, she's coaching me every single day about restoring my DNA template and all these things, because it's very uncomfortable for these super high level beings. She's like, "Can you clean this up, please? Because I can't be in here," And it's also fascinating to watch these interdimensional energies already try to imprint her and try to get her. And so there's space holding abilities and things we need to learn shamanically about clearing space and holding a space of protection for these
Yes.
kids as they're coming in.
Yes.
So
This is where you
it's
would
so
have the group
fascinating.
of grandmothers and aunties holding space for you for the whole time of your pregnancy, as well as into the birthing and beyond. Nandu Menon in India, in the Kerala region, he has a book, Odia's something, Odia's Journey or something, Nandu, Nandu, Menon, Menon. It's like Odia's Journey. And he talks about that's a matriarchy in India, Kerala, and that they would do all of these very intense rituals from the time being around the hut that the couple was making love in, to get pregnant, all the way, holding that protection. So I think that we want to have a protection circle for you, Z, number one. And the other thing is that, yes, you have to make it happen. Just like anything in your life, sometimes things happen through grace, and sometimes they happen through you make it happen. You meet the universe halfway. All of these women did, all these holy women did. And so the greatest damage that could have been done to this divine birth understanding is the idea, let it be done according to thy will. You know, fuck that. Okay. She was like, yes, let it be done according to thy will in co-creative operation with my will. Okay. That's what it was all about. These women had will. They were using their third chakra. They were using their eighth chakra, their third chakra, all of their chakras of their third eye, to will these beings into existence. They're not just sitting around, you know, wearing utility belts from festivals and calling themselves priestesses. You're like, they're busy. Okay. And so, yes, will, third chakra energy is a really big, important part of this. So to destroy the image of Mary's will has been yet another one of those misrepresentations to twist the story around. Tremendous will for her to get. Sri Kaleshwar talks about her practices, and I'm going to talk about that more in my next book on Mary. This book basically focuses on what is in the Infancy Gospel of James that corresponds with all the research and the facts that I found from across the ancient Mediterranean world, and how some of the technologies Mary and Elizabeth and her mother were using. But forgot where I was going with that. Oh yes, but Sri Kaleshwar talks about her practices in the middle of the night. Like, this woman was meditating her butt off. Okay. She really was. She was channeling, talking to angels. I mean, like, when did she ever sleep? Practically, hardly. Like any of the high holy level avatars. Very little sleep, and very, you know, a lot of, in those quiet hours, communing with the divine.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you hear me talk about these comparisons. So, to become a professional at anything, you kind of need to practice. And so that's why we have a lot of spiritual delusion in the spiritual community, where it's like, well, you want to be a professional wrestler, you have to do push-ups and train, 6 hours a day. If you want to be a professional pianist, you train. If you want to be a mathematician, you study. And if you want to be a spiritual person, apparently we think we don't have to do anything. But obviously, if you want to become a spiritual master, or experience attainment or mastery in anything, it's just about how much devotion. It's just that, when you have a calling, when you feel this resonance, it's easy because you just get pulled by that force of desiring or devotion to creation so much that it's not even like you're forcing yourself really to do it, because there's nothing
That's
else
right.
you'd rather be doing. But
Yeah,
you're
actually,
still.
yes, it's a form of ecstasy. But the thing that happens is that the Babylonian money magic system gets in our way to make us all anxiety ridden about that we have to make money to live and survive, as well as all of the other AI insertions through the technology that's like, no, I'd rather be on Facebook right now. I'd rather be addicted into my Instagram account. I'd rather be looking at this video, that video. All of that addictive pull is the greatest distraction toward the away from the ecstasy that comes from union in meditative states and other kinds of states. And we have to continue to pull ourselves back into it. Even those of us who have had entheos, being one with God, having the God in oneself, we can so easily get drawn into these 3D combined with AI addictive scenarios. And so
And
we
they're really
have,
designed to do that, aren't they?
we have to keep pulling ourselves back. That's the greatest issue right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to go into some of these offerings that are occurring right now, because I'm sure we can talk for hours and hours and
Oh my
hours.
God.
And I really feel like maybe there is a like an offering that we're gonna be creating together at some point, because I'm really
Oh
feeling like
God.
there's so much resonance there.
I hear you, and I would love that. I just think, wow, that could be incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first off, I have the links. All the links are down in the descriptions below. Obviously, the link to going and getting Marguerite's book. I just cannot recommend that book enough. It just blew my system wide open. And because it's so historical in a way, the way that you wove that in, you can't really contest the things that you're saying in this book. She's also got Oracle Priestess training, and you can also do private mentoring with Marguerite. And she also holds Mother Mary Love and Empowerment circles and cacao ceremonies as well. Now, are the cacao ceremonies in person or are they online?
Mainly they're online right now. I am sort of working in my local area with some small things, but there's one coming up December 12th online. That's Activate Your Christ Sophia Light Within, which is, I didn't know at that point that it was the antidote to AI. I just had created the ceremony theme, but yeah, so that's coming up. The Mother Mary Love and Empowerment Circle gets us into the energy of Mother Mary with a guided meditation, and then an oracle once a month on Thursdays. And I also have the Holy Womb Chakra teachings, which is basically the repository for a lot of the material I've been talking about today from Sri Kaleshwar, which would include mantras and yantras that Mary supposedly used, that certainly are, whether she did or not, they are extremely powerful. And I can attest to that on numerous levels for clearing your womb, releasing heartache, releasing cords from other people. And these can be taken, this can be taken by anyone of any gender orientation, and truly empowering your holy womb chakra and or your connection to Mother Divine and your mother's holy womb chakra. So these are practical ways through a mantra system.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And go ahead and check those out. I am currently being called to create this container again with Kara. She just called me a couple weeks ago, and we are opening up the 9-week womb healing class again. So that is in the description as well. It's called the Healing the Womb and the Return of the Original Mother Goddess Frequency. This is a really beautiful offering that I think goes right in line with all of Marguerite's work, because I think this is more on the healing side. We're going to
Yeah.
go through all the dimensionalities of the physical, the etheric, the emotional, the astral. And we're also going to go into template healing and talking about, how this abuse on the divine feminine reaches all the way up into like 11D and the lower angelic realms, because it really starts up there. And so if you are wanting to engage in more of the priestess training and in some of these, practices that Marguerite is bringing through, I recommend, going through the healings, because, it's going to help us access the womb as well. And I like what Marguerite was saying earlier about how in 3D, when we run a business and we make money and all of these things, there's this frequency of like, resistance or constriction, or it's meant to be hard. And, Kara, she's really been Jedi training me about how creation, because when you run a business and when you create things, when you make money, this is your creational process. And so there's a way for us to install a new operating system right now of really starting to create in joy and in ecstasy and in brilliance and in delight. And, every time I start to slip back into like more, masculine or 3D ways of operating, she just immediately smacks me, because she's like, we're not allowed to operate like that. We're not allowed to create like that. You can't create the new earth in that vibration. So all of this is part of the alchemy. If you are a woman that's wanting to go through the sexual healing and to learn this new operating system and to create like the original divine goddess template, Kara and I are actually going to be facilitating this container together. Really, I feel like my new job is her desk clerk. She's like, all right, mom, write this down. And I'm just like, okay, whatever you say, honey.
That is so great. That is so great. And that's what needs to happen now, because Mary was Jesus's teacher when he was in the womb, but Kara is your teacher. And I'm sure vice versa as well. But still, that is that idea of women and their babies in their wombs as the co-teachers of one another. That's a whole course in and of itself that I hope you'll do, because
It's beautiful.
that's another area of magic where you're already starting to teach, imprint, encourage, and strengthen your child. They are doing the same for you. It's a figure eight. I'm just seeing a lot of possibility there. That's fantastic. And
Yeah.
I'll be having this video in my newsletter, and I'm so happy to introduce you to my community. I'm sure many people will already know you, but some will not. And I can't recommend you highly enough, or your work, all of the classes and the big events that you do, and your private healing. I mean, you did an amazing healing on me a couple of weeks ago, and it's just like a hip issue is gone that I had from falling on the ice. It was out of alignment, and you're like, okay, now I'm working on the right hip. And I'm like, that's so interesting. And you never worked on the left hip. You worked on the right hip, and now it's like it's all straight. So I really highly, highly recommend you and everything you're doing. I mean, it's so breathtaking. It's so exciting
Thank you so much.
and so
It's really an
valuable for
honor.
all of us personally and globally. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really feel that way about you too. And I feel like, phew, I'm getting chills. I feel like this
Yeah.
is like an alliance on a level that, we might not even understand
Yeah.
consciously right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is, about the future, is about these kids. This alliance is totally about supporting these new avatar children that are desiring to come in, in the upcoming school. I feel like this is where we can probably collaborate, is about more of these classes on, how to prepare our space and to really bring these children in, because God, we need these children.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
them here, and they want to be here. They want to be here so much. We just got to kind of go that extra mile to support them in coming in. And I think that our
Yeah.
ability to communicate with kids on the other side, it's such a gift, because they're not in their physical bodies. They don't have any ego distortions or any trauma. They're these perfect ascended beings, either directly from source, or they're from, a higher dimension where they're angels. When Kara first came to me, she had 3 pairs of wings and she was an angel. And, she was telling me that she was here to teach me how to materialize from thin air. And when I'm looking up, there's hundreds of them. They're so ready to
Yeah.
come in. But, we have to be able to hear them. This is why we do the subtle energy training, the psychic training, the oracle
Yes.
trainings with Marguerite. Marguerite, when she was here, we did this beautiful cacao ceremony. And I think that, it was one of the most like pure frequencies. And I've shared this with Marguerite in our personal conversations on, um, in this community, I don't really call it channeling, because I
Yeah.
feel like when you say is, we're becoming oracles, is the sacred energy around it, because
That's right.
you don't just start channeling, right? You have to create space. It's a sacred
That's right.
practice that you embark in, and you have to understand that there's a lot of reverence and respect and sacred practices that go around that. And so when I could feel the purity of Marguerite's channel, I was touched by it, because I just don't see a lot of that in our community. You guys hear me talking about that, complaining about that all the time, about how channeling has just become this thing, and
Yeah.
most of the time it's not being held in reverence. And so in that space, who knows, everything can come through. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Z. That's really beautiful. I know. I think we just have a mutual mutual respect for one another. That's really beautiful. I'm so
And there's
grateful.
an Andromedan connection there as well.
Oh God, that's coming for me more and more. I'm awakening to that aspect. Yeah. Okay. We'll have to talk about that at some point. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
All right, so we're just coming up on the hour here. Is there any parting gifts of wisdom that you'd like to share just before we close on out here?
I think it's really that it's important that we all work in cooperative co-creation now. And what facilitates that is the healing of ourselves, so that we can work harmoniously together. Like Z, I know you've done so much work clearing, meditating hour upon hour. I've been making my own effort. The more we do that, the more we come to each other cleanly, and the more we can work cooperatively without the shadow elements taking over the proceedings. And that's an important aspect, this very human healing, so that we can be in partnership and manage anything that's coming up and not get busted apart by it, because these beings are always wanting to bust apart alliances and things like that. And it's so easy to do when everyone's unhealed and, has a lot of trauma residue left. So I think for us to continue to do our personal healing so that we can continue to come together in mutual support and co-creation, so we can be not only the puzzle pieces that fit together with the bigger whole, but it's more we inspire each other to create on that fractal holographic level just unimagined things that are unimaginable right now. And I think that's what continues to happen for you and me. Like, oh my gosh, you know, we start to real, and I'm sure with all those who are studying with you, they start getting triggered and tipped off to things, and then they start spinning in their creative way. So I think that's what it is, because, you know, the Holy Family, I mean, they were elevated and they were in 3D, and they had to deal with all these things as well, be they jealousies or insecurities or fears when outside forces or inside forces were coming to try to bust it up. And I mean, look what they had to go through with the whole crucifixion. Talk about a drama. So, yeah, let's just continue to heal ourselves, be gentle with ourselves so that we can continue to come together and work cooperatively, because also these women who did divine birth did not act alone when they were the most successful. They had a group around them working with them and protecting them. So it's all about now collaboration.
That is such a beautiful message, Marguerite. I think that that is just brilliant. I think that this is really where we're headed as a community here. I know that oftentimes in our community, you know, we want to come together, and the greatest force of destruction to collaboration are those shadow aspects that Marguerite is talking about. So, brilliant message. We're so grateful and honored for you to be here this week and for us to have this conversation. I'm sure there's many more coming in the future. And yeah, on that note, blessings to everyone in the world out there receiving this broadcast. And hopefully, go check out Marguerite's stuff. Go get her book. Go get on her mailing list. She's always coming out with really beautiful offerings. And so, all right. For those of you that just discovered Marguerite, you're welcome.
And for those on mine who have discovered Z, you're welcome, and get on her email list and start reading and participating in her things, because your life will be infinitely enhanced.
All right, guys. I could just sit here and talk to you for like hours, but we're just gonna shut this down for now, and we'll be back later. Bye,
All right.
everybody.